Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I was hoping to have a little bit more news on this front before I touched on this topic again, but it is getting later into August. It is getting into the territory of when the Maple Leafs were maybe looking to revisit the Morgan Rielly situation. So let's take a look at what we've already talked about and some added context. This bit of information from Pierre LeBrun on June the 23rd in an Athletic article, I believe, was the last bit of information that we've gotten on the situation from one of the more respected insiders. And Pierre LeBrun noted here that the negotiation is going to wait until August after the July fireworks are done. Well, we've gotten past that. And then he goes on to say here at the very end that Kyle Dubas seemed much more at ease discussing Zach Hyman and Frederik Andersen play out their deals before free agency when I asked him about it on a season-ending media call. It was clear, however, Dubas wasn't that comfortable doing that this time with Morgan Rielly. Either he signed this summer or there's probably a trade. Personally, he thinks the Leafs find a way to extend Rielly. But since that article's been published, we saw some pretty big contracts handed out to defensemen over the last month or so. Darnell Nurse's $9.25 million 8-year deal. He's 27, so similar situation to Morgan Rielly, who I believe will be 28 at the end of next season. Zach Werenski's deal for over $9.5 million, I think, is a little bit different because he's younger and they bought the most productive years of his career, right? 24 to 30. A guy like Dougie Hamilton, he's 28. He's an offensive defenseman, $9 million in 7 seasons, albeit I think that Dougie Hamilton is better than Morgan Rielly. Cale Makar's contract, again, he's better than Morgan Rielly. That's also a bit of a discount, and they bought the more productive years of his career with him just being 22 right now. And there was there's one more contract here. Seth Jones's deal for $9.5 million for 8 seasons, and he's 27 years old, a similar age to Morgan Rielly. The old contract comparable that I used for a while now and a lot of other people have been using was Torrey Krug's contract that he signed in October of 2020 when he was 28, turning 29 years old for 7 seasons and $6.5 million per. And if you're looking at the 2017-2018 season up until last year, the production between Torrey Krug and Morgan Rielly here in just raw points and the number of games played is pretty close. That was a decent comparable, but the contracts that we saw signed over the last month and a half or two or so might have just blown this comparable right out of the water. And it also has been reported that a guy like Morgan Rielly is willing to take a discount, right? Guys shouldn't have to take a discount, right? Go out there and get that money, right? You can only play for so long, but at the same time, it would be nice, right? To have a couple of guys maybe take a small haircut off of what they're worth for the better sake of the team. And if we take a look at Morgan Rielly and what he's been to this Toronto Maple Leafs team over the last number of seasons, yeah, it's no secret. The guy's not very good at defending. Not off the rush, not in his own zone, and it's not particularly something that you would like him to do. But when it comes to rushing the puck from his own zone through the neutral zone into the offensive zone and distributing the puck to his forwards and contributing there, yeah, nothing wrong with him. He's one of the better defensemen in the league at it. And a lot of people would like to elect Rasmus Sandin as Morgan Rielly's replacement as early as next season, but the playoffs showed that's not necessarily the case. And Morgan Rielly had a beast of a playoff series against the Montreal Canadiens. He was hands down their best defender in that series, one of their best players even. In the 5 games that Rasmus Sandin did get in against the Montreal Canadiens, he got pushed around. He didn't really look that great. I mean, he did score a goal on the power play, right? A Maple Leafs goal on the power play by a defenseman. That's something that Morgan Rielly hasn't really done over the last couple of seasons. But man, Morgan Rielly was so good in that series. And yes, he isn't the greatest defensively, but he does play against the other team's best players all the time, and he is able to be that offensive play driver. And Rasmus Sandin did get really pushed around in a more sheltered role against the Canadiens. I think Rasmus Sandin will figure out how to play with a little bit less time and less space and to overcome playing against more physical competition and still be able to showcase the skill and the talent that he has. But for now, I don't see him being able to replace Morgan Rielly. I think people, they don't understand that he plays really, really tough minutes. And I talked about in my previous video that I will leave linked above the screen at the top. Yes, having those 4 players make all that money, yes, it is a problem. Yes, it's not exactly ideal, but there are things that you can do to work around that. Drafting well, graduating prospects from your system is one of them. And the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't really done that very well the last couple of seasons. The last 3 drafts do look better, but the 2015, 16, and 17 years have yielded almost nothing for this team. And at that point, it causes you to hang on to players too long, whether that be guys like Justin Hall, guys like Alex Kerfoot, Andreas Johnsson, Kasperi Kapanen, etc. You want to go down the list. It also causes you to dive into too many dumpsters. You know, you're trying to squeeze too much out of players that are past their primes. But this is the one instance where the Toronto Maple Leafs have someone who looks to be a clear successor to a guy like Morgan Rielly in Rasmus Sandin. We can see him one day being that player, and he's shown that ability so far. But I don't necessarily think that he is far enough along in his development to hand him the keys just yet. So what do? Do you go into the regular season with Morgan Rielly being an unrestricted free agent and risk losing him in free agency for nothing? Or do you try to work out a trade, or do you sign the guy? And like I said a little bit earlier on in the video, it is getting to that later on in August, right? Training camp is like 6 weeks away. So in the next couple of weeks, Dubas has to know. He has to know what that number is on Morgan Rielly, because if it's not in the realm of what they can do for next season, you have to move the guy. You have to. And if his ask is too high, if that discount is just not enough, or if it doesn't work into the plans for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would really appreciate a Neil Pionkin, a first-round pick type return that the Winnipeg Jets got for Jacob Trouba a couple of seasons ago before he signed a contract for over $8 million with the New York Rangers and didn't really live up to it. Because if we're looking ahead to next season here, you still do have RFAs, right? Guys like Rasmus Sandin, guys like Timothy Liljegren, who you don't necessarily know exactly 100% what you're going to get from those guys. You would hope that they're consistent contributors this year. You also have Jack Campbell being a UFA, but you got $14.8 million to work with here. And this is with the salary cap going up $1 million, which it has been reported on. It could happen. It could not happen. It's not 100% confirmed yet. The players owe the owners a lot of money. Phil Kessel's $1.2 million also comes off the books, though. If a guy like Jack Campbell plays well in tandem with Peter Mrazek, do you hand him like a Chris Driedger type contract for $3.5 million over 3 seasons? I mean, that's pretty reasonable, right? Driedger's been really good if you look at his numbers over the last couple of seasons. That leaves you with a shade under $12 million to get RFAs like Sandin and Liljegren signed. Is it enough, right? Can you re-sign Morgan Rielly for $7.5 or $8 million? Because even that would be a discount on what the contracts that we saw this past offseason. And this is what it would look like with Campbell at $3.5 and Morgan Rielly at $8. That's $3.3 million remaining to sign restricted free agents like Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. I'm not saying that this is a good idea or what I would do, but at this point, guys like Brody and Muzzin, they got 2 years left on their deals, and they're more than likely going to be past their prime by the time those expire. You know, and this is where what I was saying earlier comes into play. You still have Kerfoot at $3.5 million here. Can you develop some players, some cheap young players that you've drafted? There are a couple of them in the system which look pretty promising that could fill some of those holes in their top 4 or in their top 9 forwards. If you can, I would say that you might be able to give Morgan Rielly that contract. And if the salary cap keeps going up by $1 million each season, and the reason why it's only going up by $1 million each season, or it would, is because if you look at it, this is just really quick and dirty, but if you have $5 billion worth of revenue each season, and players' salaries take up $2.5 billion, then the owners get $2.5 billion, and that's a 50-50 split. But if the players' salaries exceed the 50-50 number there, now the players owe the owners, and that's what it is right now. So if you increase the salary cap, you're increasing players' salaries. And if you're increasing the players' salaries, just increasing the debt. So you limit the amount of inflation at which their salaries can go, and you hope that the league draws in more revenue to counteract that. But at the end of next season, which is when this hypothetical contract for Morgan Rielly would be starting, you got 2 years left with guys like Matthews and Nylander, guys like Brody and Muzzin as well, and Mrazek, right? You got the only guys with more than 2 years left on their deals would be Marner and Tavares at this point. This team has a 3 or 4 year window to really win. And then at the end of it, you're going to have a past his prime John Tavares and William Nylander, Mitch Marner, and Austin Matthews, who are very much still in the prime of their careers. They're all going to need to do contracts, but they're more than likely still going to be really good. And hopefully they can allocate that salary a little bit better. Or maybe those players learn and they take a little bit of a haircut, all come together, stay together sort of thing. Again, I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm just saying if you're on team re-sign Morgan Rielly, that's the argument that you would be making. But if you're on team trade him, and a guy like Rasmus Sandin takes a lot of positive steps this season in his development, well, then the Leafs can be in a position to offer Sandin the same type of contract that Morgan Rielly was previously on. And to have Sandin locked up to term and a reasonable cap hit the next time that you need to re-sign Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, and fill out the rest of the team, of course, would be huge. It'd be a huge asset. And I know for a fan base that is already pretty miserable and mad at a lot of the players of this team, talking about the next time we're going to need to re-sign all these guys is not necessarily the most exciting thing. I'm just talking about both sides here. But again, it comes back to no matter if you re-sign Morgan Rielly or not, whether he walks for free or you get something decent for him, team's not going to win if Matthews and Marner don't score. Because you can trade Morgan Rielly and the team can be legitimately worse in the regular season compared to what it was last year. But if you get development from both Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, the team's going to be better in the playoffs. And that's what we need, right? We don't need to be better or just as good in the regular season. We need to be better in the playoffs. And the only way to be better in the playoffs without making major changes is for those guys to take steps forward. I hate that that's where we're at, but at the same time, we're living and dying with our best players, which is what we asked Babcock to do a couple of seasons ago. It's a real just really frustrating, isn't it? So let me know what team you guys are on down in the comment section. Are you on team re-sign him or team trade him? And let me know why. Because there is no team let him walk. Because if they let him walk for nothing, I don't know. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, I guess training camp is less than 6 weeks away. And the regular season is what? The 10th of October? 13th of October? Something like that? I don't know.